Ozlem Ayduk, and I'm a professor and chair of the Department of Psychology at UC Berkeley. I'm going to discuss what we refer to as rejection sensitivity, which has a lot of implications for how people think and behave and function in close relationships. Rejection sensitivity is a personality disposition that emerges out of early experiences with caregivers. And if caregivers are neglectful, rejecting, then children develop this expectation that they're going to be rejected by other people in other relationships. And because the primary caregiver is so important for survival, it's also really high stakes. So it's not just the expectation, but the fear that rejection is actually going to occur. So those two things, that combination, caring about rejection and anticipating its occurrence, is what we refer to as rejection sensitivity, how we measure it. And then it has downstream consequences, which also are conceptualized as part of the legacy of rejection sensitivity. Even in graduate school, this was partly my dissertation, I was bothered by the fact that, are these people doomed? If you're rejection sensitive, are you doomed to experience all kinds of negative things in your interpersonal life? And, people who are rejection sensitive are more depressed and etc. So this is an individual differences construct. So there's a questionnaire that measures people's level of rejection sensitivity by presenting them with different scenarios in which rejection may be possible. And then for each scenario, people are asked, to what extent would you expect this person to respond with, let's say, kindness and acceptance versus not? And to what degree do you care about whether or not this person actually accepts you? And the example I always give in my class is, think of telemarketers. They're expecting to be rejected, but I hope for their own sake, they're not anxious about it. They're not rejection sensitive. They're not going to take it personally because it's not important, right? It's not valued that the potential customer rejects them. In some studies, there were kind of suggestions that being rejection sensitive is good if you are good in regulating your emotions, because it probably captures this care for being loved, which makes people engage in more pro-social behaviors. And that probably leads to more positive peer relationships. This was in a sample with kids in the Bronx in middle school, where we saw that rejection-sensitive kids who were also good in self-regulation were actually doing better than kids who were low in rejection sensitivity. So I think it makes sense that you want a certain level of anxiety about being rejected, not caring about whether or not other people reject you. Yeah, that's basically what the research shows. The idea here is that, rejection is a threat to the survival of the human species. And so social rejection has kind of co-opted the fight or flight system that has evolved to protect us from physical threats. But it's the very, very similar mechanism that underlies how we respond to a life-threatening, predator versus social rejection. And the idea is that if you expect rejection, if you expect threat, and you're concerned about it, you feel vulnerable, the natural response to that is to become hypervigilant. You start looking for cues that are relevant, and the system is set up so that it doesn't care about false alarms. Like if 19 out of 20 times you mistake a leaf for the rattlesnake, the system is like, I don't care, that's fine. As long as I catch the snake in the 20th time, even if it's 1 out of 20, right? So it's the same mechanism here. The system is really biased to perceive rejection so that it doesn't miss the occurrence of rejection. And of course, that leads to perceiving more rejection in the environment. Or, it could be someone is ignoring you and it's no big rejection, but you exaggerate its meaning. And because, again, rejection is a kind of a threat, rejection-sensitive individuals, especially when they're in a situation where they are, starting to feel, am I going to be rejected? Am I not going to be rejected? The body prepares itself to fight or flight. So when they perceive rejection, their responses are very defensive and exaggerated. And we have done quite a bit of work showing that, how it happens at the level of mental representations, like people high in rejection sensitivity have stronger mental associations between rejection and hostility, for example. We've seen it in behavioral expressions, like if we bring couples into the lab and have them discuss an unresolved romantic conflict. Rejection-sensitive people, particularly women, are more likely to behave in ways that express anger and hostility. And the system is kind of biased towards maintaining itself because when rejection-sensitive people expect rejection, they see rejection, they overreact to rejection, and that overreaction, of course, leads to a self-fulfilling prophecy where partners are less satisfied and they're more likely to experience breakup, and that feeds back into the closed circuit. That's the study we're running. It's a metacognitive intervention, basically telling people about the literature, about this dynamic. This is what happens. This is why some people may feel like they're over and over re-experiencing the same relationship with different people, because you're bringing your expectations into each of those, and then overreactions and how that turns into a self-fulfilling prophecy. So a wife said, "Do you see that guy with the huge red hat dancing?" The husband says, "Yes, who is he?" The wife said, "He proposed to me 10 years ago and I rejected him." The husband said, "Oh my God, he's still celebrating."